I might get arrested for this. About a month ago, I started doing a little test where I was microdosing psilocybin mushrooms. It's something I've always been curious about. It's been requested many times on this channel, so I thought I would just give it a try. And it's been a bit of a journey, but to tell this story, we kind of need to go back to the start. Doing something a little bit different. As many of my close followers know, especially the people on Patreon, I've sort of started a new thing this year where I've been having people sort of vote on topics. Because it's been working out pretty well in terms of like getting views and whatnot. And one of the videos, or one of the topics that got voted on probably higher than anything else so far, is a video on microdosing. So I decided to do it. But not just a video where I looked through research and stuff like that. I thought I would actually try microdosing. So yeah, microdosing is a topic that I've been interested in for a really long time. The idea of using psychedelics in one way or another for therapeutic purposes, there seems to be a lot of opportunity there. I think if something can be useful for people, especially in terms of mental health in today's day and age, I think we should be embracing it. But I'm also skeptical. You know, like the idea of taking like tiny doses of something and having that, shape your thoughts or whatever. I don't know. I don't know. But it's one of these things I've always wanted to test out. So for those who don't know me personally, you might not know what my history or experience is with drugs in general. I'm really not a big drug person. I know my parents might be watching this, so I'm sorry to both of you. But yes, I have consumed some cannabis here and there. And I have tried psilocybin mushrooms once. I tried it once. It was with an ex of mine. We got some from somebody and we took them and had a little, experience. But the thing that stuck out to me with that experience was it genuinely did improve my mental state for quite a long period after that. I don't need to go into specifics. It was personal stuff. But, in this relationship, I was having some insecurities. I was being hung up on some stuff, and after that experience that I had with it, I remember waking up the next day, and all of that insecurity and all of that stuff that was bothering me was gone. I mean, it was just completely gone. Gone to the point that I remember like not being able to remember why I was upset in the first place. Now, those insecurities eventually did come back because my insecurities are strong. But for that brief moment, it wasn't a brief moment, it was actually a good month or so, it was just gone, and it was amazing to me that it had the ability to do that. And really, ever since then, I've been really interested in the value of psychedelics. I've got a book right here, How to Change Your Mind by Michael Pollan, that has been really enlightening. As you can see, it's kind of torn up because it's been traveling around with me quite a bit. So yeah, for this video, I decided I would give it a try. Found me a source of very low dose psilocybin in these pills, and I'm going to give it a go for about a month and document what happens. And I'm keeping track of a few different metrics. As I go through this, I'm going to keep a journal and just kind of document my mood, my emotions, how I'm feeling, and specifically 3 things: my creativity, my mood, and my focus. I've heard a lot of people say that microdosing LSD or psilocybin can actually help with your focus quite a bit, which is something I need a lot of help with. Also, for what it's worth, I just thought I would say, I am actually kind of already taking mushrooms in a sense. I take lion's mane. I take these every day. Lion's mane has shown in some studies to actually help improve cognition over time and maybe even help stave off things like dementia and Alzheimer's and stuff like that. But like toward the beginning of this year, I started to notice I was having trouble coming up with words. And I don't mean hard words. I mean like basic words. I would be like, yeah, I walked out the door. I started to get a little nervous, if I'm being honest with you. But I read these studies about lion's mane. I thought, why not? I'll give it a try. And I started taking it. And I don't know if that's what caused that little word glitch problem that I was having to go away, but it kind of went away. I did at some point start to notice that it just wasn't really happening anymore. And again, I don't know if that's the lion's mane or not. I don't know if maybe I feel like I feel like in a way my brain got into the habit of forgetting things, if that makes sense. But anyway, I'm continuing to take it. I'm not seeing a downside to it. So until I hear about a study or whatever otherwise that says that it's a bad idea to be taking it, I'll keep taking it. Anyway, I don't know how this is going to go. This is a total experiential thing. I might feel nothing. It might make no difference whatsoever. But it's something that I'm going to do. I'm going to share it with you guys. You guys voted on it. You wanted to see it. I've always wanted to try it. So starting today and every 3 days for a month, I'm going to be taking these and I'm going to document it. So how about I stop talking about it and let's do it. Oh, I'm fine. Okay, so this is my first day. I took it, I don't know, it's 3 o'clock right now. I took it at maybe 1:45. And I am feeling a little swimmy, if I'm being honest. Enough so that I set up the camera and started recording. If you've taken an edible or anything like that, you know that feeling of like it kind of comes and goes in waves a little bit. And that's kind of how it feels right now. Like I just set up the camera and started recording and it seems to have chilled a little bit, but I can't say I feel nothing. I do feel something. Just a little swimmy. So just a quick check-in at the end of the day. I'm speaking quietly because everybody in the house is asleep. But end of day one, I feel normal. I feel fine. For a hot minute there, and I think I recorded a video talking about it, it was kind of like when you take some strong cold medicine and it kicks in, you kind of get that kind of wavy, like, ooh, kind of sensation. I felt that for, maybe about an hour. And I felt kind of normal ever since then. So far, I would say the results are minimal. I've been writing, and I feel like I wrote some pretty creative stuff, but I don't know that it was like exceptionally creative or that it came exceptionally easier. My mood is good, but it's also a Saturday, and it's been nice weather, and we saw friends. Focus could still be better, so we'll see where things go from here. There is a standard protocol when it comes to microdosing, and the general idea is to space it out every 3 days. And the reason is because apparently your body can actually build up a bit of a tolerance to it, so they suggest not taking it every single day, but taking it every third day. So that's what I did. For a month, for 30 days, I guess that makes it about 10 doses, I took it every third day and kept track as I went along. All right, so it's my third day on the protocol, which means it's the second dose day. Feeling normal right now. The first time that I took it, after a couple hours, I was feeling a little swimmy. I think I talked about that. And I'm not feeling any of that today. I just kind of feel normal. So there you go. I've been keeping track of my focus, my creativity, and my overall mood, and they've been kind of steady, and I'm starting to worry that I may have already screwed this up because I didn't do a control. I didn't measure those factors, for a few weeks before I did this, so there's no control group. But in fairness, those were the weeks before and of the election, so my stress level was higher than normal, as was everybody else's, so I don't think that would have been an accurate, measure either. But, I can honestly say the last few days have been good. My mood has been good. I haven't been, I haven't had one of those days where I get just riled up about everything or just in a sour mood. But that's a sample size of just a few days. I've got, 27 more days to go, and we'll see how it goes. But so far, second dose, feeling normal, not feeling anything at all, actually, and I gotta do some work today, so maybe I'll catch some of that, and we'll see how it goes. Psychedelics research has been going through a bit of a renaissance over the last couple of decades. After their discovery by the hippies in the 50s and 60s, psychedelics like psilocybin became victims of Nixon's war on drugs in the 1970s. It was reclassified as a Schedule I drug in October of 1970 as part of the Controlled Substances Act. Schedule I basically means that it has no real medical benefit and it has a high likelihood of abuse. What this means is no federal funding for psychedelic research, but also it just makes it difficult for people to research on their own with private money because it's kind of hard to research a drug when you can go to jail for buying it. It wouldn't be until the year 2000 that finally regulatory approval was given to a group of researchers at Johns Hopkins University, actually. They were conducting studies on healthy volunteers who had no experience with psilocybin. So yeah, research was basically on hold for 30 years, or at least it was very underground, or it was all anecdotal. But this new research resulted in a landmark study in 2006 titled "Psilocybin Can Occasion Mystical Type Experiences Having Substantial and Sustained Personal Meaning and Spiritual Significance." It's a real barn burner. But this study basically showed that psilocybin mushrooms can affect like spiritual experiences that are on par with the kind of mystical experiences people have in spiritual settings, church, seances, drum circles, that kind of thing. And this research opened up the floodgates to more serious research from universities across the United States. And the funny thing about that is that it's not its therapeutic benefits, though it did conclude that it did have some therapeutic benefits. It was its spiritual effects that made people take the research more seriously. Like, how on brand is that for the United States? But it was kind of a stroke of genius that they took that direction with it because, nobody's going to argue against religious fervor in this country. So by 2008, the Johns Hopkins group had outlined some safety guidelines for researching psychedelics, which laid the groundwork for further testing. By the way, I am getting a lot of this from the website for the Johns Hopkins Center for Psychedelics and Consciousness Research, so if this seems a little Johns Hopkins heavy, that's why. But yeah, over the years, more and more research was done that showed that psychedelics help people to quit smoking and drinking and all kinds of other addictions. Research also showed that psychedelics can help cancer patients to deal with existential anxiety. It can also help with major depression, PTSD, and all kinds of other things. All this, by the way, was being done with private money and donations. None of this was actually done with federal funds until, in 2020, the National Institutes of Health awarded a series of research grants, which is the first time that was allowed in over 50 years. So the research is ongoing, and there's more of it than ever before, but one of the things they found in their research is exactly which part of the brain these compounds are affecting. They were able to show through fMRI imaging that psilocybin and other psychedelics can affect an area called the claustrum. The claustrum is the area of the brain responsible for setting attention and switching tasks, but more colloquially, it's said that this is where the ego is located. Like, this is the part of the brain that gives us a sense of self. The claustrum is hidden deep down inside the brain, but it has these tendrils that go out and connect with all kinds of different areas. So it kind of touches a lot of different parts of the brain, different modules, and it affects how they think. I would refer you to the split brain experiments video that I did that talks about how we really do have several semi-conscious modules operating in our brains at all times. Well, the claustrum is kind of what connects all those together and provides a coherent sense of this is who I am, this is how I think, this is what I do. And it's thought that by tamping down the activity in the claustrum, it kind of removes that sense of self and causes you to feel more connected to other people, which is one of the effects of psychedelics. People report feeling connected to all things because their normally all-important ego has been sort of temporarily dissolved. Some call this ego death, which is kind of an extreme term, but whatever. So it's easy to see why that feeling of connection and that sort of bypassing of our hang-ups that are associated with our egos and our sense of self, it's easy to see how that could create a mystical or a spiritual experience. But from a therapeutic standpoint, it basically just removes the guardrails that we've built up in our mind, the defenses that we've installed over the years to protect ourselves from, painful emotions and memories. It basically just tears all that down so you can actually access and deal with the root causes of your problems. Now, it is important to note that set and setting plays a big part in this experience because your brain is more open and it's more susceptible to external stimuli. So if you're in a place where you feel safe, especially if there's somebody there that you trust to guide you and kind of help you along, obviously that's the most ideal. But if you go to a heightened stressful situation, you might cook your brain. Yeah, this is where my comments get filled with, "This is bullshit. I was tripping balls at a Guar concert and a bunch of knife-wielding clowns tied me up and put me in the back of a trunk and then drove me off a cliff. I barely survived, but I turned out just fine. The demon in my toothbrush told me so." There are several compounds that have these kinds of effects. I'm talking about psilocybin quite a bit here, but there's also LSD, MDMA, DMT, and salvinorin A. They all produce similar effects and different effects. You can share your experiences in the comments. And that's the general idea around psychedelics. I could go a lot deeper, but this video is really about microdosing psychedelics. So what's that about? Well, as they say, the dose makes the poison. So if you take 2 or 3 ibuprofen, that's not a problem. If you take a whole bottle, you might need a new liver. Hell, if you drink too much water, you could die from it. Similarly, a snake bite could kill you, But if you just get a tiny amount of it, you might build up a resistance. And it can actually have positive benefits, which is a whole video for another time. But the same thing is true for mushrooms, right? If you take 2 or 3 grams, you might see some swirlies on the wall. You might feel like hugging someone. You might think that your dog that's just sitting on the couch is the funniest thing you've ever seen on the planet. Whereas if you take 5 to 7 grams, you might get to walk through the forest holding hands with God. So the idea is, what if you took that way, way, way down? Like down so low that you don't have any of the hallucinogenic effects, you can still work and function. Could you still get some of the benefits of that suppression of the colostrum I was talking about? The increased connectivity, the feeling of closeness with others, reduced anxiety, all that stuff. That's the idea behind microdosing, and its proponents swear by it.
In what they call microdosing.
Microdosing.
Microdosing psilocybin-containing mushrooms.
The largest study of microdosing.
These are dried magic mushrooms.
Microdosing with LSD can reduce the symptoms of depression and anxiety.
Is microdosing just a word to say I'm doing drugs?
So it's been about a week, and I thought I would check in because some weird things are starting to happen. So I've only taken 3 so far, so it's still, I think, a small sample size. And I think that these things do take a little bit of time to really kind of start to work their magic or whatever. But when I set out to do this thing, I had 3 metrics that I was keeping track of. I'm sure I'm talking about in the video. I had 3 metrics I was keeping track of: focus, mood, and creativity. Because those were the things that I read about. Those were the things that, I felt like were easy for me to keep track of as somebody who writes and does stuff all the time. And I think I'm seeing little shifts here and there. I'm having good days and bad days, just like normal, and on that front, it's not too different. What I am starting to see happen, though, that I wasn't expecting, is I've been feeling feelings. I think I've been feeling more emotions lately. And I don't want to say emotional necessarily, because that kind of implies that it's an extreme thing. But I have started to kind of notice, like, I'm a little bit more huggy with my wife. I read things. I feel more inclined to speak out about things. I think I've engaged a little bit more on social media. But there have been things on say Facebook that normally I would just kind of read and move on. But I felt inclined to say something on there, and not just a hey kind of thing, but really engage in a long comment and express my opinion on something, which is not something I normally do. But a prime example of this is I ran across in my Facebook memories an old photo of me from about 9 years ago, not quite 10 years ago, 9 years ago. I was doing this thing where I was working at an office at the time, and I normally wore my regular t-shirts or whatever. It was pretty casual. But for a month, I decided to do a 30-day tie challenge. The challenge was to wear a tie every day and just kind of see psychologically if that shifts mindset or whatever, having to dress up a little bit. I was like, let me spend a month looking nicer than I normally do. But I ran across a photo of me, and so this is 9 years ago, not quite 10 years, and obviously I was younger then than I am now, a lot less gray. I didn't really have much of a beard at all back then. But I was just kind of struck by how young I looked, and how as enough time had passed between now and that photo that I felt like I could kind of objectively look at that person. That's not really me. That's a past version of me. I didn't have an emotional connection to it. It was I could look at this person more objectively, this photo. And I was just kind of struck that I was like, I was a good-looking guy, I wasn't an unattractive dude. But it suddenly made me really sad because I didn't feel attractive at the time. I had all these hang-ups and insecurities, and I played small, and I was timid, and I didn't see myself as attractive. I think I had this belief deep down inside that there was something sort of fundamentally ugly about myself, and I was just looking at this person that I used to be, and I was like, you were a good-looking dude. Why did you hate yourself so much? And it made me sad, Again, emotion. I felt an emotion looking at this old photo of myself. And of course I see old photos of myself all the time and never think anything of it. But this time it really it really got to me, and I felt like I wanted to share that. Again, I was like engaging on social media more than I normally did. So I reshared it, kind of sharing those thoughts. It got a nice response. A lot of people were following up on it. Somebody said it was very relatable. They hated how relatable it was because they felt the same way. And I was also making the point in it that, I'm sure 10 years from now, I will look back at videos and photos of myself today and be like, why did you think you look so old? You look great, But I can't see that now. Like, why can't we see these things now? Why does it have to take 10 years for us to be able to look back and give ourselves the kind of grace and compassion that we can't do in the present moment, And in fact, my wife, when it finally came across her Facebook feed, she actually came downstairs and she was like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "Yeah." And she was like, "Well, I just saw that post that you made," and she does know that I'm doing this microdosing experiment, and I asked her to let me know if I start doing anything that seems different from how I would normally do it, or if I'm shifting in some way, and she came down and she was like, "I don't think that's something you would normally have shared. That seemed kind of a little out of character for you to do that," and I think she probably has a point. I think it might be something like that. So my measuring the creativity thing, I do feel like the creativity might be going up a little bit, but I think what's bringing that on, what's spurring that a little bit, is I am feeling and connecting more with my emotions than I normally do. I think I'm probably a pretty blocked kind of guy. Don't like that about myself, but I tend to be very reserved. And sometimes I do worry that I am kind of, I don't want to say dead inside or anything like that, but I am very buttoned up. I don't let that stuff out very much. And here I am feeling compelled to let that stuff out. Not only am I feeling it, but I want to share that. I want to express that. And that is a creative thing. So microdosing gained in popularity maybe about 10 years ago or so in the tech bro and personal development circles of the internet. Nootropics became a big thing, people wanting to superpower their brains and productivity, and this was just another way of doing that. Every other podcast had somebody on there talking about how it gave them superhuman focus and helped them with creative problem solving, but all these were just anecdotal stories. We were still lagging in actual studies. But once the studies started coming in, we finally got no answers. Or I should say we got answers, but they were a lot of different answers, and sometimes they contradicted each other, so nothing was definitive. In a 2019 paper from Macquarie University in Sydney, Australia, they conducted a couple of different studies. The first one was described as a, quote, systematic observational investigation of 98 microdosing participants who provided daily ratings of psychological functioning over a 6-week period. Of those 98, 63 of them did a battery of tests at the beginning and then at the end, measuring little things like mood, attention, well-being, mystical experiences, personality, creativity, and sense of agency. All of this revealed a general increase in psychological functioning on dosing days, but then limited evidence on off days. And the before and after tests showed reductions in levels of depression and stress, lower levels of distractibility, and increased information absorption, but also increased neuroticism. So mostly good results, but they became concerned that there might be a bit of expectancy bias, which is basically the placebo effect. Basically, that might have messed with the results a bit because some of the participants were pulled from online communities that discuss microdosing. So they had been exposed to all kinds of anecdotal stories of people, kind of having the same results that they were claiming to have. So yeah, when they went into the study, they were kind of looking for those effects. And like anything else, if you go looking for something, you're likely to find it. So to try to rule that out, they had a group of 263 participants. Some of them were experienced microdosers, some were brand new to the whole thing, and they had them do a survey to kind of gauge what the results might be, what they would expect to get from microdosing, just to see if that lined up with their original results. And the result was a mixed bag. Some of it lined up perfectly with results, but some of them, like the absorption and the neuroticism, nobody predicted. That's not to say that the expected results wasn't real, just that they may have been affected by the person's expectation. The main conclusion of this study was that there needs to be more studies. And there were more studies. In 2022, a team from the University of British Columbia conducted the largest study of its kind at the time, having 935 participants microdose psilocybin for 30 days. Kind of like the first study, they had them note psychological markers along the way, and while they saw a difference in results amongst age groups, with 55 and older not having quite the same level of effects, they ended the study with this. Quote, the comparability of our findings with those of prior research from diverse locations with different methodologies suggests a relatively consistent association between microdosing and improved mental health. Now this was described as a, quote, naturalistic observational study, which has its merits, but you could also kind of describe it as a very large collection of anecdotal evidence in a controlled manner. What we're really looking for is double-blind placebo-controlled studies, and we got one literally 1 month later. In August of 2022, a team from the University of Buenos Aires recruited 34 volunteers to test the effects of half a gram of dried mushrooms, testing its effects on subjective experience, behavior, creativity, both divergent and convergent thinking, perception, cognition, and brain activity. They actually hooked the participants to an EEG machine to measure the effects. What they found was that the effects were definitely more significantly intense for people who took the active dose versus the ones on placebo, but there is a catch. It was only more intense for the people who figured out that they weren't on placebo. I guess some of them felt the effects of it enough that they could tell that they were on it, and some couldn't. And the ones who didn't show the same results and the positive effects as the people who did know that they were on it. Interestingly, those EEG results correlated with that. They showed reduced activity in the theta band, and this was the same whether they knew they were taking the mushrooms or not. But in the end, they chalked this one up to expectation bias, so this is more of a negative result. The point is, there's still some researching to go, and there's probably going to be more opportunity for research because psilocybin mushrooms are becoming a lot more legal than they used to be. Just in the last few years, psilocybin mushrooms have seen a wave of decriminalizations in the United States. In 2020, mushrooms were decriminalized in Denver, Santa Cruz, and Oakland in California, and Ann Arbor, Michigan. Decriminalized is not the same as making it legal, it just means that it's not high priority and the punishments aren't as severe. Anyway, over the next 2 years, it got decriminalized in Oregon, Washington, D.C., Seattle, and 3 cities in Massachusetts. In November 2022, Colorado passed the Natural Medicine Health Act, which decriminalized psilocybin, DMT, ibogaine, and mescaline, and legalized healing centers where people can use the drugs while under therapeutic supervision. In 2023, a bill was passed in California called Senate Bill 58. It would have also decriminalized it, but it was vetoed by Gavin Newsom. He wanted to establish some more safeguards in the bill. But these are just a handful of states, and federally it's still classified as a Schedule I drug at any and all amounts, which, I'll be honest, is making me a little nervous about this video. I'm just doing a science. But this was also kind of confusing to me when I started looking all this up because I see ads for like mushroom gummies everywhere, like gummies and drinks. Everywhere I look, there's some new relaxing or mood-enhancing product in my social media. Well, it turns out that most of these aren't powered by psilocybin. They're using different mushrooms, like Amanita muscaria, which has a hallucinogenic compound called muscimol. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing any of that right. And some of them use kind of derivatives of psilocybin. Kind of like how you can use Delta-9 products that are derived from THC, so they kind of skirt the law that way. You'll often see on these products that they list a proprietary blend of mushrooms, so it's kind of cagey. It's kind of hard to know exactly what's in them. But yeah, when it comes to psilocybin itself, even if you're just microdosing, this is technically illegal. So I can't recommend anybody to do it. But if it was something you were always curious about, but you were too concerned about the legalities of the whole thing, well, here was my experience, my alleged experience. It didn't help me with my focus in the way that I was hoping it would. That was really what I was hoping to get the most out of, because that's something I really struggle with. I'm always having to like force myself to focus through Pomodoro timers and that kind of thing, which works. But I was really hoping for something that would kind of like keep me a little bit more plugged in. And I saw no increase in that whatsoever with this. As for my mood, I think it did enhance my mood a little bit, but in the sense of like heightening my emotions or making them more easily accessible, it pumped a little warm blood into my cold, dead heart. I think I felt a little bit more joy than I normally would, a bit more contentment, a bit more accepting of things. So those are good emotions, obviously, but it also played into deeper, more sadness level emotions. But that kind of brings me around to creativity. When I heard that it could help with creativity, I thought it might help me to come up with mind-blowing ideas that I couldn't come up with before, or help me solve problems, find solutions to problems that I wouldn't have been able to come up with before. Just mind-blowing stuff, right? And it wasn't like that, not for me anyway. For me, it was more tied in with that that slight increase in my emotional reactivity. It kind of made me interact on social media a little bit more. I would see things, I would feel things, and I would have to write about it because I tend to do that. I write for therapy. So I think maybe it's just like a motivating thing, you know? It just kind of like made me want to write stuff because I was feeling something that I wanted to get out. That's kind of how I operate. But I have to be honest, like this could just be chalked up to placebo or the expectancy bias that they talk about. I had read into it before I did it, so I didn't really go in completely clean. And it wasn't so drastic that I can say like, wow, that totally changed my life or anything like that. It was a very, very subtle thing. And I will also say, I think I'm a pretty even-keeled person as it is. In fact, I might be a little too even-keeled. So having a little bit more access to emotions is probably a good thing. But I could definitely see how this very subtle hint of a change could be really beneficial for somebody who maybe isn't quite as stable or even-keeled as I might be. So my honest opinion is if it's something that you think is going to be a life-changing thing, I don't think you're going to quite get that experience, so you can just not if that's what you're expecting. So I wouldn't recommend it for that. I also feel like I, on the whole, have to recommend you not do it just because of the legal aspect of it. But I will honestly say I didn't see any downsides to it. I didn't feel numbed or out of control in any way. I just kind of felt normal with a little bit of extra, maybe emotional boost out of it. So, very mild thing. But again, I have to say don't do it. Don't do drugs, kids. But again, I have to stress, if you're going to do this, please talk to your doctor about it, especially if you're already on some kind of psychoactive drug. And again, this is not legal, so don't get yourself in trouble. That's all I can say. Also, I'm a little concerned about this video getting demonetized. There's a good chance that could happen. Psychedelics are still a very taboo topic, and that sucks because I think it's actually really important to talk about. And this is a big reason why I don't just post my videos on YouTube. I also post them on Nebula. Yeah, everything that's posted here on YouTube is also posted over on Nebula, except you don't have to deal with ads. I usually post them a little bit early, and I usually include stuff that you don't see here on YouTube. That includes an entire series of videos like my Forgotten Atrocities series and my Mysteries of the Human Body series. Can't watch any of that on YouTube. Yeah, I guess I actually have more content on Nebula than I have here. Also, as it turns out, I'm not the only creator in the world. There are hundreds of thoughtful, entertaining creators on Nebula making exciting original series like The Archaeology Quest by Real Science, War Room from Real Life Lore. If you like game shows, Jet Lag has been a breakout hit, plus The Getaway from the same guys, which is hilarious. Plus, we've been breaking into narrative features like Patrick Willems' The Night of the Coconut, Identities by Jesse Earl, and Dracula's Ex-Girlfriend by Abigail Thorne. Nebula really has become a place where people who are known for YouTube can go and do bigger and better things. And I'm honestly just really excited to be a part of it. There's some really big plans in the works for this next year. I can't talk about all of it, but it could involve yours truly. So if you want to check it out and see what kind of extra stuff I'm talking about, you can get 40% off your subscription when you sign up at nebula.tv/joescott. And that 40% off brings a monthly subscription down to just $3 a month and $36 for a year. By the way, if you're one of those last-minute Christmas shoppers and you know someone that might be into it, an annual subscription is the gift that keeps on giving all year, and you don't have to wait for something to arrive in the mail. You don't even have to get off your couch to get it, so that's one less gift to worry about. So yeah, just go to gift.nebula.tv/joescott to do that. Oh, and there is one more way to enjoy Nebula, which is for the rest of your life. Yes, if you're sold on the Nebula thing, you can make a one-time payment of $300 and get a lifetime membership, after which you will never get billed for anything again. You'll just get Nebula until the day you shuffle off this mortal coil. You could be watching Nebula in a flying car someday. So yeah, get on over to Nebula, see all the goodies I've been keeping from you. I think you'll like it, and you'll be supporting independent creators like me, which, of course, I deeply appreciate. So thank you guys so much for watching. If this is your first time here, maybe watch this one where I talk about the split brain experiment that was referenced earlier in the video. It's a fantastic video, if I do say so myself. It's on a really interesting topic anyway, but go check that out, or look at any of the others that might be recommended by YouTube in their lovely algorithm. And if you watch those videos and you enjoy them, I do invite you to subscribe. I come back with videos every Monday. Big thanks to the Answer Files on Patreon and the channel members who help support this channel with their pocket change, which I do appreciate. If you would like to join them, you can go to patreon.com/answerswithjoe, or just hit the join button down below and become a channel member. But that's it for today. You guys go out there, have an eye-opening holiday and end of the year. I wish the best for all of you. Please be safe, and I'll see you next Monday. Love you guys. Take care.